Jake Harmon sat in what he could only describe as the galaxy's most pretentious waiting room, handcuffed to a chair that seemed designed for someone with 3 extra vertebrae. The metal was cold. The lighting was that special shade of fluorescent that made everyone look either dead or about to be. And somewhere in the distance, he could hear what sounded like elevator music played through a malfunctioning synthesizer. He was having a terrible day. It had started pretty normal. Wake up, fix the busted coolant line on the transport ship he'd been hitching a ride on, drink something that technically qualified as coffee, and maybe nap in the cargo bay. Simple, easy. The kind of Tuesday that didn't involve getting kidnapped by what appeared to be the galaxy's most uptight homeowners association. But here he was. The doors hissed open with unnecessary drama, and in walked High Arbiter Veltronus. At least, that's what the glowing nameplate hovering above his head said. Veltronus looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, stretched it to 7 feet tall, dressed it in robes that cost more than Jake's entire education, and given it a superiority complex that could be seen from orbit. Behind him scuttled Pip, a small, nervous creature that resembled a bipedal gecko wearing glasses. Pip carried a datapad that was definitely too large for him and kept making worried squeaking noises. "Human Jake Harmon," Veltronus announced, his voice dripping with the kind of authority that suggested he practiced this in the mirror. "You stand before the Galactic Security Council." "I'm sitting, actually," Jake said. Pip made a choking sound. Veltronus's eyes narrowed, which was impressive considering they were compound. "You have been brought here," Veltronus continued, ignoring him with the precision of someone who'd had a lot of practice, "to answer questions regarding your species' petition to join galactic society." Jake blinked. "We have a petition? That's news to me. I'm a mechanic, not a diplomat." Yes, Veltronus waved a manipulator appendage dismissively. "That is precisely why you are here. We have studied your kind extensively, and we have questions, serious questions." "About what? My species' ability to make really bad coffee? Because I can explain that." "About your weapons," Veltronus said, leaning forward with the intensity of someone about to reveal a conspiracy theory. "Your hidden arsenal, your secret technologies, the terrifying capabilities that have allowed your species to survive against impossible odds time and time again." Jake stared at him. Then he looked at Pip, who was nodding frantically. Then back at Veltronus. "I'm sorry, what?" "Do not play coy with us, human," Veltronus snapped. "We have reviewed your historical records. The battles won with inferior technology, the impossible rescues, the tendency to survive scenarios that would obliterate any other species. You are hiding something, and before we allow your kind into the wider galaxy, we must know what it is." Jake tried to process this. "You kidnapped me because you think humans have some kind of secret superweapon? We did not kidnap you. We strategically detained you for questioning." "Pretty sure that's the definition of kidnapping, but okay." Pip nervously raised a small hand. "Sir, if I may, the human does appear genuinely confused." "Of course he appears confused," Veltronus said, now pacing with the energy of a daytime television lawyer. "It is clearly a tactic. Humans are devious. Our intelligence suggests they are masters of deception and psychological warfare." "We are?" Jake asked. "I mean, I once convinced my supervisor that the coffee machine broke itself, but I wouldn't call that psychological warfare." Veltronus spun around, his robes making a dramatic swooshing sound. "There, right there, that casual admission of deception. You see, Pip? They cannot help themselves." Jake was starting to get a headache. "Look, I don't know what the records you've been reading, but humans don't have any secret weapons. We've got some decent tech, sure, but nothing that would, I don't know, blow up planets or whatever you're worried about." "Then explain," Veltronus demanded, "how your species has survived. By all calculations, humans should have destroyed themselves centuries ago. Yet you persist, you thrive, you expand. What are you not telling us?" Jake looked down at his handcuffs, then at the 2 aliens staring at him with a mixture of fear and suspicion, and realized something important. They were serious. They actually believed humanity was hiding something, and they weren't going to let him go until they got an answer. This was going to be a very long day. Veltronus snapped his manipulators, and the wall behind him lit up with what appeared to be a very dramatic presentation. Jake recognized the aesthetic immediately. This was a PowerPoint presentation. An alien PowerPoint presentation. About humanity. He was definitely in hell. "Let us review the evidence," Veltronus declared, gesturing at the first slide. It showed a grainy image of what looked like Apollo 13, Exhibit A. Your spacecraft suffers catastrophic failure in the vacuum of space. By all calculations, the crew should perish. Instead, they construct a carbon dioxide filtration system using, and I quote, a sock, some plastic bags, and the cover of a flight manual. Yeah, that was pretty cool, Jake admitted. Engineering on the fly. We call it improvisation. Improvisation, Veltronis repeated slowly, as if tasting poison. You have a word for this insanity. It's not insanity. It's just making do with what you have. You know, necessity is the mother of invention and all that. Pip was scribbling furiously on his datapad. Making do with what you have, he muttered. Tactical resource optimization under pressure. That's not what I said. The presentation continued. The next slide showed a patched-together military vehicle from one of Earth's many wars. It was held together with what appeared to be scrap metal, rope, and an alarming amount of optimism. Exhibit B, Veltronis continued. Your military forces in multiple historical conflicts have been documented using equipment that, by all engineering standards, should not function. Yet somehow, it does. Explain. Jake squinted at the image. Is that duct tape? We do not know what duct tape is, and frankly, we are afraid to ask. It's tape. Really strong tape. You use it to fix stuff. The room went silent. Pip dropped his datapad. You fight wars, Veltronis said slowly. With tape. No, we fight wars with actual weapons. We just also fix things with tape when they break. It's not that deep, man. Not that deep, Veltronis repeated, his voice climbing an octave. Pip. Note that humans have developed battlefield repair technology so advanced that they describe it casually as not that deep. That's not what it is, Jake protested, but they weren't listening. The door opened again, and another alien entered. This one was built like a tank, covered in what looked like natural armor plating, and had the bearing of someone who'd seen combat. Lots of combat. Commander Thraxis, Veltronis acknowledged with a nod. Thank you for joining us. Arbiter. Thraxis rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. He looked at Jake the way a person might look at an unexploded bomb. Is this the human? Yeah, hi, hello, still right here and still very confused, Jake said, waving his cuffed hands as much as he could. Thraxis circled him slowly. I have fought many species across the galaxy, conquered worlds, led fleets, and I have never encountered anything quite like humanity's military history. Oh good, more of this, Jake muttered. You fight without proper equipment. You win battles you should lose. You refuse to surrender even when mathematically you have no chance of victory. Thraxis leaned in close. Tell me, human, do you have a berserker? Gene? Some biological switch that activates in combat? A what? No, we just don't like losing. Don't like losing, Thraxis repeated. He turned to Veltronis. The human admits to pathological competitiveness. I didn't admit to anything pathological. I just said we don't like losing. Nobody likes losing. Most species accept defeat when defeat is logical, Veltronis said. Humans apparently do not. Well, yeah, because usually when someone says something is impossible, that just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. The three aliens exchanged glances. Pip's hands were shaking as he typed. Let me see if I understand correctly, Veltronis said carefully. When faced with impossible odds, humanity's response is to try harder. Pretty much, yeah. And when your equipment fails, you repair it with tape and refuse to acknowledge that this is abnormal behavior. It's not abnormal. It's practical. And you have an entire cultural concept dedicated to making things work despite having insufficient resources, which you call improvisation. Now you're getting it, Jake said, wondering if he could speed this along and maybe get some actual food. Thraxis shook his head slowly. Arbiter, I recommend we classify humanity as a Category 5 threat minimum. They are either lying about their capabilities, or they genuinely do not understand how dangerous they are. I'm not sure which possibility is more terrifying. I'm literally just a guy who fixes cooling systems, Jake said. I'm not dangerous. That, Veltronis said, pointing dramatically, is exactly what a dangerous species would say. Jake was starting to think spite and stubbornness weren't just human traits. They might be universal constants. Unfortunately, these aliens had weaponized them into paranoia. This was definitely going to be a long day. Jake looked at the three aliens staring at him like he was a ticking time bomb wrapped in a mystery wrapped in duct tape. He looked at the presentation still, glowing on the wall. He looked at his handcuffs, and then he made a decision that would either get him released or dissected for science. He was going to lean into this so hard. All right, Jake said, letting out a long, dramatic sigh. You got me. I'll tell you the truth, Pip squeaked. Thraxis's hand moved toward what was probably a weapon. Veltronus leaned forward so fast he nearly fell over. I knew it, Veltronus hissed. I knew you were hiding something. Humanity's deadliest weapons, Jake said, pausing for effect because if he was doing this, he was doing it right. The things that have kept us alive against impossible odds, that have let us punch way above our weight class, that make us, apparently, terrifying to the rest of the galaxy. Yes? All three aliens said in unison. Spite and improvisation. Silence. Complete, total silence. Somewhere in the station, a ventilation system hummed. I'm sorry, Veltronus said slowly. What? Spite and improvisation, Jake repeated, putting emphasis on each word. Those are our secret weapons. That's it. That's the big reveal. Thraxis looked like someone had just told him gravity was optional. You cannot be serious. Oh, I am deadly serious, Jake said, channeling every ounce of sarcasm he'd accumulated over years of dealing with malfunctioning equipment and unhelpful supervisors. See, here's the thing about humans. We are incredibly stubborn, cosmically, aggressively, unreasonably stubborn. Someone tells us we can't do something? Well, now we have to do it, just to prove them wrong. A machine breaks? We'll fix it out of pure irritation that it stopped working. We're about to die in space? Absolutely not. Death doesn't get to win. We're making it home out of spite alone. Pip was typing so fast his datapad was smoking slightly. You're telling me, Veltronus said, his voice strained, that your species survives on stubbornness. And improvisation. Don't forget improvisation, Jake added helpfully. We look at a broken situation, go, that's not supposed to be like that, and then we fix it with whatever's lying around. Tape, coffee grounds, a paperclip, someone's shoelace. Doesn't matter. We'll make it work because the alternative is admitting defeat, and as we've established, we don't like that. This is insane, Thraxis muttered. No, insane is what we call Tuesday, Jake continued, warming to his theme. You want to know why humans keep winning impossible fights? It's because we're too annoyed to lose. Someone shoots our ship? Well, that's just rude. Now we're going to board their ship and take it. Equipment fails? That's just insulting to the engineer who built it. Time to fix it with aggressive swearing and whatever's in our pockets. Aggressive swearing? Pip asked weakly. Oh yeah, super important. Studies show that swearing actually increases pain tolerance and perseverance. We literally curse our way through problems. Veltronus had sat down. He looked like he was having an existential crisis. You are telling me that humanity has no advanced technology, no secret weapons, no hidden capabilities? Nope. Just spite and the ability to fix things with inappropriate materials. And the unwillingness to die because that would be letting the universe win, Jake added. That's important too. We have this saying, hold my beer and watch this. It's a declaration of intent to do something probably stupid but definitely impressive. Hold your beer, Veltronus repeated numbly. It's a beverage. We put it down so our hands are free to prove we can do the impossible thing. It's like a ritual. Thraxis was pacing now. This explains everything. The jury-rigged equipment, the refusal to surrender, the improbable victories. They're not improbable to us, Jake said. They're just Tuesdays. Stop saying Tuesday like it means something, Veltronus snapped. But it does mean something. It means a day where things go wrong and you fix them anyway because what else are you going to do? Give up? Please. We're not programmed for that. Pip raised a shaking hand. I have a question. Shoot. What does it mean to MacGyver something? Jake grinned. It was not a comforting grin. Oh, buddy, I'm so glad you asked. MacGyver is what we call it when you take a paperclip, some chewing gum, and sheer determination, and somehow save the day with it. It's named after a historical documentary about a man who could escape any situation with pocket lint and attitude. Historical documentary, Thraxis said faintly. We turned spite and improvisation into entertainment, Jake said proudly. We watch it for fun. Veltronus stood up abruptly. I need to confer with the council. Commander, Pip, with me. The human stays here. As they filed out, Jake heard Pip whisper. He said they survive on stubbornness and inappropriate repair materials. I know, Veltronus replied, sounding deeply disturbed. I know. The door closed, leaving Jake alone in the room. He smiled. This was going better than expected. They left him alone for exactly 23 minutes. Jake knew because he counted. partly out of boredom, and partly because his watch was one of the few things they hadn't confiscated. Apparently, the Galactic Security Council didn't consider a digital watch a threat. Their loss. When the door finally opened, Veltronis swept in with the energy of someone who'd made a very important decision. Thraxus and Pip followed, though Pip looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. "We have decided," Veltronis announced, "that your claims require verification." "You want me to prove spite and improvisation are real," Jake said flatly. "Precisely. We are going to place you in a controlled scenario. If you can demonstrate these supposed abilities, we will consider your testimony credible." Jake raised his cuffed hands. "And if I can't? Then we will assume you are lying, and humanity will be denied entry to galactic society pending further investigation." Veltronis smiled, which looked unsettling on a mantis face. "We are going to lock you in one of our high-security holding cells. It is, by design, inescapable. If you can exit the cell using only what is available inside, you will have proven your point. And if I just sit there, then we will know humans are not as dangerous as you claim, and we can proceed with standard integration protocols." Jake considered this. On one hand, he could just sit in the cell, wait this out, and let the bureaucrats do their thing. On the other hand, these aliens had kidnapped him, accused his entire species of having secret weapons, and he'd missed lunch, spite it was. "All right," Jake said, standing up. "Let's do this." They walked him through a series of corridors that all looked the same, bland metal walls with that same awful lighting, until they reached a door that looked significantly more heavy-duty than the others. Thraxus pressed his hand to a panel, and the door slid open, with a hiss that suggested it meant business. The cell inside was, Jake had to admit, pretty bare bones. White walls, white floor, white ceiling, a bench bolted to the wall, a water dispenser in the corner, some exposed wiring near the ceiling where maintenance had apparently gotten lazy, no windows, no obvious weak points. "You have 1 hour," Veltronis said. "The door will not open before then, regardless of what you do. Unless I get out first," Jake said cheerfully. "That is not possible. We'll see." They sealed him in. Jake heard multiple locks engaging, which seemed excessive, but whatever. He looked around the cell, taking inventory. Bench, metal, bolted down, but the bolts looked slightly corroded. Water dispenser, plastic tubing, electrical connection for the cooling unit. Wiring, exposed. Probably not supposed to be exposed. His watch, his jumpsuit, his boots with the steel toes because he worked around heavy machinery and he'd learned that lesson the hard way. And most importantly, his spite, which was currently running at about an 8 out of 10 in climbing. "Okay," he said to himself, walking over to the water dispenser. "Let's see what we're working with here." He could see the camera in the corner. They were watching. Good. He wanted them to watch. First, the water dispenser. He knelt down and examined the connection. Standard setup, reasonably well made. But like all things, it had weaknesses. The cooling unit needed power. Power meant wiring. Wiring meant conductivity. Now, Jake narrated, because if he was putting on a show, he was going to commit. The thing about electronic locks is they're great until they're not. They're secure, sure, but they're also dependent on maintaining proper electrical systems. He yanked the plastic tubing free from the dispenser. Water started dripping onto the floor. "Oops," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Better stop that." He didn't stop it. Instead, he removed his watch and used the metal backing to unscrew the panel on the water dispenser. Inside was exactly what he'd hoped for: basic wiring, a small capacitor, and a cooling element. Through the camera, he could hear muffled voices. He ignored them. "See, the problem with putting a water dispenser in a cell," he continued, pulling wires free with practiced ease, "is that water is conductive. And this station, like most stations, probably runs all its security systems on a centralized grid to save on redundancy costs. Which means, if I can create a power surge in the right place." He twisted 2 wires together, then shoved them into the puddle of water spreading across the floor. Nothing happened. "Right, need more juice," he muttered. He looked up at the exposed wiring in the ceiling. Too high to reach normally, but that's what the bench was for. Using the edge of his watch, he worked at the corroded bolts on the bench. They were old, probably original installation, and the humidity in the cell had done its work over the years. After 5 minutes of aggressive persuasion and some creative leverage involving his boot, 1 bolt came free. "And that's what we call percussive maintenance," Jake announced, wiggling the bench. It was loose now, unstable. Perfect. He climbed onto the wobbly bench, carefully balancing himself. The wiring was just within reach. He grabbed it, pulled, and a section came free with a shower of sparks. Probably should have checked if that was live, he said, shaking his slightly singed hand. But hey, no time like the present. The voices outside were louder now. Someone was definitely panicking. Jake jumped down, dragged the loose wiring over to his puddle of water, and began stripping the insulation with the edge of his watch. It was slow work, but spite was a powerful motivator. The key to improvisation, he explained to his invisible audience, is understanding that everything is a tool if you're creative enough. This watch, screwdriver. This water, conductor. This wiring, about to be a very exciting safety hazard. He connected the exposed wiring to the water dispenser wires, then dropped the whole mess into the puddle. The lights flickered, the camera sparked, and somewhere in the distance, an alarm started blaring. The door locks disengaged with a series of loud clicks. Jake grabbed the door handle, which was now completely unpowered, and pulled it open manually. Veltronis, Thraxis, and Pip stood in the corridor, staring at him. Pip's datapad was displaying what looked like a critical system error. Thraxis had his weapon drawn but looked too confused to use it. Veltronis's jaw was hanging open in a way that suggested his species wasn't supposed to do that. 42 minutes, Jake said, checking his watch. Not bad. Now, about that lunch you guys owe me. Behind him, the water dispenser sparked one final time and died with a sad gurgling sound. How? Veltronis whispered. Spite, Jake said, grinning. And improvisation. Thraxis holstered his weapon slowly. I am formally requesting that humanity be classified as a Category X threat. Does that mean I get lunch? That means, Thraxis said, looking genuinely shaken, that we are never ever letting humans near our engineering systems unsupervised. Probably smart, Jake agreed. They were leading Jake back to the interrogation room, Thraxis muttering something about safety protocols and Pip compiling what looked like an incident report, when the station decided to have opinions about its continued existence. The lights flickered, not the dramatic flicker Jake had caused, but the kind of flicker that meant something important had stopped doing its job. Then came a sound that was universal across every species in the galaxy, the sound of machinery giving up on life. A groaning, grinding noise echoed through the corridors, followed by a mechanical death rattle that made even Thraxis stop walking. That's not good, Jake said. Environmental systems, Pip squeaked, staring at his datapad. In horror. They're failing. Multiple cascading errors across the entire station. Veltronis spun around. How is this possible? We just had maintenance last cycle. Sir, it appears that when the human caused a power surge in Section 7 Delta, it triggered a feedback loop in the primary distribution grid, which overloaded the backup systems. Which then, I get it. I broke something, Jake interrupted. Where's the problem? Engineering Bay, Level 3, Pip said. But sir, the repair crews are already responding. Protocol dictates that we... Another alarm joined the first, then another. The temperature in the corridor was already starting to rise. Protocol dictates, Thraxis growled, that we don't all suffocate while waiting for proper authorization. Move. They ran. Well, the aliens ran with coordinated efficiency. Jake jogged behind them with the casual pace of someone who dealt with approximately 1,000 mechanical emergencies and knew that panicking just made you tired. The engineering bay was chaos. Aliens in what he assumed were maintenance uniforms were running between terminals, shouting in 3 different languages, and achieving absolutely nothing productive. Smoke was pouring from a control panel. Something was beeping urgently. The main display showed system failures cascading across multiple screens, like a very depressing game of Tetris. Report, Veltronis demanded. A maintenance chief, some kind of blue-scaled alien with 4 arms, all of which were gesturing frantically, turned to them. Arbiter, the situation is critical. We need to initiate emergency protocols, file the proper documentation, convene a crisis committee. How long will that take? Thraxis interrupted. Following proper procedure? Approximately 40 minutes to get authorization. Then, we have 12 minutes of life support left, Pip whispered, staring at his datapad. Jake was already walking past them toward the smoking control panel. Human, what are you doing? Veltronis called out. My job, Jake said, not stopping. He rolled up his sleeves. Everybody shut up for 30 seconds and let me think. You cannot simply... I said shut up. The engineering bay went silent, possibly because nobody had ever told Veltronis to shut up before, or possibly because Jake had already opened the smoking panel and was elbow-deep in alien technology he'd never seen before. Okay, Jake muttered, tracing wires with his fingers. This connects to that, which feeds into this, which is completely fried. That's the primary problem. Secondary problem is this coupling here is vibrating itself apart. Tertiary problem is someone installed this backwards, and it's been gradually failing for weeks. He looked around the engineering bay. Coffee maker, maintenance tools, spare parts, a pile of what looked like replacement cables, someone's lunch sitting abandoned on a workstation. I need that coffee maker, those cables, and something heat-resistant. Also a wrench. Size doesn't matter. And is that a bagel? The maintenance chief stared at him. The coffee maker? Yes, now. Please and thank you, but mostly now. 10 minutes of life support left. Nobody was moving. Look, Jake said, his patience running on fumes. You can either hand me that stuff and let me fix this, or you can file the proper paperwork and we all die waiting for authorization. Your choice, but make it fast because I'm getting lightheaded. The maintenance chief threw him the wrench. What followed was the most aggressive repair job Jake had ever performed, and he'd once fixed a plasma conduit using bubblegum and a hair tie. He bypassed the fried coupling with cables that were definitely not rated for that much power. He used the heating element from the coffee maker to seal a crack in a coolant line. He tightened the loose coupling with the wrench while bracing it with his boot. And yes, he used the bagel as an insulator because it was the right size and technically, organic material could be non-conductive if you really needed it to be. The whole time, he kept up a running commentary that was 50% technical explanation and 50% creative profanity. This is ridiculous. Who designed this? Why is this here? That doesn't go there. Why is everything proprietary? Give me that. No, not that, the other thing. For the love of 5 minutes of life support. Almost got it, just need to there. He twisted one final connection, the coffee maker heating element holding a jury-rigged seal together, and slapped the panel. The beeping stopped. The smoke cleared, the displays flickered, then stabilized. The temperature began to drop back to normal levels. Jake stepped back, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. There, fixed. You're going to want to replace that whole coupling assembly in the next day or so, and somebody needs to reinstall that secondary feed line correctly. And also, your coffee maker is now a critical life support component, so maybe don't try to make coffee with it. The engineering bay was completely silent. Jake turned around to find every single alien staring at him like he'd just performed a miracle. Or a crime. Possibly both. What? He said. You fixed it, the maintenance chief said weakly. With a coffee maker. And a bagel. Don't forget the bagel. That bagel is doing important work right now. Pip made a sound like a tea kettle giving up on existence. Then he fainted, his datapad clattering to the floor. Veltronis was pale, which Jake hadn't known was possible for his species. You just saved the entire station. I literally just fixed a broken machine, Jake said. This is what mechanics do. This is Tuesday. Stop saying Tuesday, Veltronis said automatically, but there was no force behind it. Thraxis was staring at the repaired panel, then at Jake, then back at the panel. He used a bagel. It was a good bagel, Jake said defensively. Proper density, right size. Don't knock bagel-based. Engineering until you've tried it. The maintenance chief slowly approached the panel, examining Jake's work. His forearms were trembling slightly. This shouldn't work. But it does, Jake pointed out. This violates approximately 47 safety regulations. But we're alive. You used a breakfast item as a critical component. But it's working. The maintenance chief. He looked at him for a long moment, then reached out one hand. Jake shook it, confused. If your species ever needs jobs, the alien said seriously, our engineering department would hire every single one of you. That's horrifying, Veltronis muttered. That's efficient, Thraxis corrected. Then he looked at Jake with something that might have been respect or might have been existential dread. The council needs to reconvene. Now. Can I eat something first? Jake asked. I fixed your station. I'm pretty sure that earns me a sandwich at minimum. He pulled a slightly squashed sandwich from inside his jumpsuit. It had been there the entire time. Every alien in the room took a step back. How long have you had that? Veltronis asked, his voice strangled. Jake unwrapped it and took a bite. Since before you grabbed me, always keep emergency supplies. That's improvisation rule number 1. Somewhere in the background, another alarm went off. The maintenance crew rushed to respond, their movements now noticeably more frantic, as if they'd suddenly realized the human had fixed one problem, but might also be a walking disaster magnet. They weren't wrong, but Jake wasn't going to tell them that. He had a sandwich to finish. The council chamber was significantly more impressive than the interrogation room, which Jake supposed made sense. You couldn't intimidate entire species into compliance without the proper ambiance. Vaulted ceilings, dramatic lighting, and enough marble to suggest that someone had a very generous decorating budget. Jake sat in the center of the room, still eating his sandwich. Around him, arranged in a semicircle of elevated seats that screamed, "We're important and you're not," sat what he assumed were the various members of the Galactic Security Council. Veltronis stood at a podium, looking like he'd aged several years in the past few hours. Pip was back on his feet but kept a notable distance from Jake, like proximity to humans might be contagious. Thraxis stood to the side, arms crossed, looking simultaneously impressed and deeply concerned. "We have reviewed the evidence," Veltronis began, his voice carrying across the chamber with practiced authority. "We have witnessed the demonstrations. We have consulted with our engineering staff, who are currently in therapy. I said I was sorry about the coffee maker," Jake called out. "You turned a beverage preparation device into a critical life support component. Our engineers are having philosophical crises about the nature of proper protocol, but we're alive, so that's nice." Veltronis pinched the bridge of his nose, or whatever passed for a nose on a mantis alien. "Yes, we are alive. Because of humanity's apparent weaponization of chaos and refusal to accept that some things cannot be fixed with inappropriate materials. Spite and improvisation," Thraxis added from his position, as the human claimed. As the human demonstrated repeatedly and with disturbing enthusiasm, Veltronis corrected. He looked down at his notes, then up at the assembled council. "This presents us with an unprecedented situation. Humanity possesses no advanced weapons, no secret technology, no hidden capabilities beyond what they have openly shared. So we're good?" Jake asked hopefully. "What humanity does possess," Veltronis continued, ignoring him, "is something potentially more dangerous. A cultural framework built entirely around the refusal to acknowledge limitations, combined with an apparently genetic predisposition to fix problems using whatever is available, regardless of whether those materials are appropriate for the task." One of the council members, a floating blob of something that might have been sentient gas, spoke up in a voice like wind chimes. "Is the human really representative of his entire species?" "We've checked," Pip squeaked, pulling up data on a holographic display. "This behavior pattern is consistent across human history. They've fixed spacecraft with duct tape. They've won battles by, and I'm quoting here, being too stubborn to lose. They've solved critical problems with chewing gum, paper clips, and sheer determination to prove the universe wrong. They have a cultural hero whose entire identity is fixing impossible problems with pocket contents," Thraxis added. "They turn this into entertainment. They watch it for fun," the council murmured among themselves, a sound like a very concerned symphony orchestra tuning up. Another council member, this one resembling a tree that had gained sentience and opinions, leaned forward. "The question before us is simple. Do we allow humanity into galactic society?" "They're dangerous," someone called out. "They're useful," someone else countered. "They used a bagel as an insulator," a third voice added, sounding traumatized. Veltronis raised his manipulators for silence. "The Galactic Security Council recognizes that humanity is, technically, not a threat in the traditional sense. They have no weapons of mass destruction beyond what we've already cataloged. No secret armies. No hidden agendas." "Great, so," Jake started. "However," Veltronis continued loudly, "they are also too chaotic to be left unsupervised. They are too useful to be excluded, too dangerous to be given unrestricted access, and too prone to improvising to be trusted with standard equipment." "I feel like that's both a compliment and an insult," Jake said. "It is absolutely both," Thraxis confirmed. Veltronis gestured dramatically. "Therefore, the Council has reached a decision. Humanity will be admitted to galactic society, with special conditions." A holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. Jake squinted at it. The title read, "Human Integration Protocol, Special Circumstances. Condition 1, Veltronis read. "Humans must provide advance warning before engaging in what they call improvisation, so that other species can evacuate to a safe distance." "That seems excessive," Jake protested. "You turned our coffee maker into life support." "Fair point. Condition 2. Humans are hereby restricted from unsupervised access to engineering systems on any non-human vessel or station until they have completed a certification program on proper protocol and procedure." "That's going to slow things down a lot," Jake pointed out. "That is precisely the intention," Veltronis said firmly. Condition 3. Any human engaging in what they describe as spite-based problem-solving must file a report afterwards detailing their methods, so that we can update our safety regulations to account for the fact that apparently anything can be a tool if humans are sufficiently motivated. The council members were nodding along. One of them was taking notes. So, and finally, Veltronis said, looking directly at Jake, humanity will be required to designate a representative to serve as a liaison between human and non-human cultures. Someone who can explain human behavior to the rest of the galaxy and, more importantly, warn us when humans are about to do something that seems completely insane but will somehow work anyway. Jake had a bad feeling about this. For S. Jake Harmon, Veltronis announced officially, the Council hereby appoints you as Ambassador of Chaos, first representative of humanity to the galactic community. No, Jake said immediately. Absolutely not. I'm a mechanic. I fix cooling systems. I'm not ambassador material. You fixed our station with a coffee maker and a bagel. That was one time. You escaped our maximum security cell in 42 minutes using water and spite. That was also one time. You convinced this entire council that humanity's greatest weapons are stubbornness and improvisation, and then you proved it. Okay, that was definitely one time and I'm not doing it again. Veltronis smiled, which Jake was learning meant he'd already lost this argument. The decision is final. Congratulations, Ambassador. I hate this, Jake said. Yes, Thraxus said, something that might have been amusement in his voice. We know. Welcome to galactic politics. Pip approached nervously, holding out a badge that read, Ambassador of Chaos, in what Jake assumed were multiple languages. Sir, you'll need to wear this at all times, for safety reasons, so other species know to be prepared. Jake took the badge, stared at it, then looked at the sandwich still in his other hand. He'd been kidnapped, interrogated, forced to escape a cell, saved a space station, and now he was apparently a diplomat. All before lunch. Actually, he was eating lunch. That was something. Fine, he said, pinning the badge to his jumpsuit. But I'm billing you for the sandwich. The sandwich you had hidden in your clothes the entire time? Veltronis asked. Spite and improvisation, Your Honor. Jake took another bite, maintaining eye contact. Spite and improvisation. The council chamber erupted in anxious chatter. Someone was calling for updated protocols. Someone else was requesting a psychiatric consultation. Pip had pulled out his datapad and was frantically typing notes. Thraxus leaned over to Veltronis. We've made a terrible mistake letting them into the galaxy, haven't we? Oh, absolutely, Veltronis agreed. But at least now they're our problem instead of someone else's. In the center of the chamber, Jake finished his sandwich, wadded up the wrapper, and looked around for a trash can. There wasn't one. He shrugged and put the wrapper back in his jumpsuit pocket. Pip made a strangled noise. How much do you have stored in there? Wouldn't you like to? No, Jake said with a grin. Somewhere in the station, another alarm went off. The council members all turned to look at Jake accusingly. He held up his hands. That one wasn't me. Probably. Probably? Veltronis repeated weakly. I mean, the bagel fix is temporary. You've got maybe 6 hours before you need to do actual repairs. I did mention that, right? The entire council groaned in unison. Jake decided this was a good time to ask the important question. So does being an ambassador come with a salary? Because I'm thinking I deserve hazard pay. Get out, Veltronis said, pointing at the door. That's not very diplomatic, Jake said, standing up. Lucky for you. I'm a professional now. Ambassador of Chaos. It's on my badge and everything. As he walked toward the exit, he heard Pip whisper to Veltronis. Sir, he mentioned duct tape earlier. What is duct tape? Veltronis's response was too quiet to hear, but Jake was pretty sure it was something along the lines of, I don't know, and I'm afraid to find out. Jake smiled. Humanity was officially part of the galactic community. This was going to be fun.